Hi, my name is Joshua Bempeshat, and I'm the author of this recently published book called Ancient Psychedelia, Alien Gods and Mushroom Goddesses. This book is 560 pages, and it contains over 1,000 images of secret mushroom symbolism on ancient artifacts, coins, stelas, wall reliefs, Christian art, medieval art, alchemy art, and as well as mushroom symbolism in the UFO culture. My work is based on over 30 years of in-depth research into the mysteries, including conspiracies of all kinds. Those include secret societies, the New World Order, ancient civilizations, magic and the occult, the supernatural, UFOs and ancient aliens, psychedelics, and pretty much just world power structures and the way that things go on behind the scenes. Now I'm going to give you a little information about my background and some of the work that I've done raising awareness through my activism and different business endeavors. When I first graduated high school, I went to work right away for Greenpeace as a canvasser going door to door. And there I learned a lot about activism. But right away I learned that there was something holding me back there, and I wasn't really able to accomplish all that I had really wanted to. And that really hit home when I started to learn about the uses for hemp and the 50,000 commercial uses and all the things that it could do for the environment. While I was working for Greenpeace, I met a kind elderly lady who introduced me to some new ideas that I had never heard about before, and two of the people that she told me about were Bill Cooper and John Lear. Cooper wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse, and this was right before the release of that book. So in 1989-90, I attended a UFO expo, and there I met Jordan Maxwell and Bill Cooper for the first time at a booth that they were sharing together. Now, for those of you who don't know who these people are, Bill Cooper was in the Navy and claimed to have come across some top secret documents called Majestic, or MJ-12, which purported that the government was in secret cahoots with extraterrestrials that had crashed here, that the government had recovered crashed discs from places like Roswell and Aztec, New Mexico, and that there was a working alliance between the government and some of these extraterrestrials. Bill Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, ended up becoming a best-selling conspiracy book. Jordan Maxwell is the world's foremost authority, I would say, on secret symbolism, and also very knowledgeable about secret societies in general. I had ended up buying two videos from Jordan at that UFO Expo, The Dawn of the New Day and the Basic Slide presentation, and those videos really changed the direction of my life in a big way. One of the things I learned from Jordan at that time is how Jesus was a symbol for the sun, and that Jesus was somehow a representation for the sun. And that was new to me at that time. But one of the things that Jordan would insist on and was showing in his information is how the elite are very aware of this knowledge, that Jesus was a symbol for the sun. A very short time after this, I ended up reading an article in High Times magazine about hemp and the 50,000 commercial uses and the different things that hemp could do for the environment. Well, after reading this article, I ended up buying the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes and reading it, and I quit working for Greenpeace shortly after that and went to volunteer and work with Jack Herer and the hemp organization on Venice Beach. It soon became apparent to me that legalization of hemp and cannabis could accomplish a good majority of what we were trying to accomplish in Greenpeace to help the environment. I soon found myself manning a hemp booth in Venice Beach from the years 1991 through 1999. And in 1991 and 1994, I was the top signature gatherer in the state of California, and also I helped collect signatures in 1995 for the hemp initiative, as well as the 1996 medical marijuana initiative with Jack Herer and Dennis Perrone. One of the first things I started to learn about when I was hanging out with Jack, which is something that Jack makes everybody aware of when they would spend time with him, is the idea that Jesus was a mushroom, and Jack introduced me to the book by John Allegro, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. At first this was a little bit confusing to me because I had thought that Jesus was a symbol for the sun. But after a few years of looking into this and learning about it, I started to understand that this was part of the changeover that occurred in our ancient history, where there was a time when Jesus was actually envisioned to be the mushroom, and then during the patriarchal changeover, he was turned into a symbol for the sun during Roman times. In 1994, my girlfriend and I were traveling back from Grateful Dead tour, and we were going through New Mexico, and we stopped off in Lyon, New Mexico to video and interview a man named William Lyon, who written a book called Space Aliens from the Pentagon. And William Lyon's book, the premise of this book was basically that the flying saucer technology had been developed by the government with the help of some Nazis and Nazi technology that they imported at the end of the Second World War during Operation Paperclip. So apparently, according to Bill Lyon, the Nazi flying saucer technology was powered on Nikola Tesla's free energy sources, and also along with the technology that was brought into the United States was the mind control program that was ended up being put into parts of MKUltra to basically inform the public and convince people that the flying saucers that they saw flying around were piloted by space aliens. So Bill Lyon had a very interesting take on things and kind of tuned me into the idea and the perspective that possibly within the UFO movement there was some mind control going on and that things were not as they appear. This really piqued my interest at the time because at the time that I was learning this, I was fairly well convinced that there was some truth to ancient aliens and probably even the idea of reptilians and aliens abducting people on this planet. And a lot of that stuff made sense to me. So this kind of brought me back into balance in a big way and gave me a viable alternative to thinking about some of these scenarios. Around the same time, I stumbled upon a book by Walter Bauert called Operation Mind Control. And this book, in one part of the book, documents the MKUltra experiments and the relation not only to LSD and psychedelics, but to the UFO field. And some of the discussion, it revolves around the idea of how psychedelics were actually studied in order to understand how the mind could be imprinted with an idea that they had been abducted by aliens. So some of this tied in really well with the stuff I was learning from William Lyon, and I started looking more into that direction of things. Now, speaking of psychedelic substances, the whole time I've been learning and studying about conspiracies, I've been learning about psychedelic substances and taking them and learning a lot about myself along the way. So I think that what this has done is it's helped me in a lot of ways to guide and train my intuition and help me to separate truth from fiction. And so being a researcher, it's been one of the things I think that's enabled me to start to be able to separate truth and to be able to see more clearly when I'm trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on in the conspiracy world. Now, I think I've done a pretty good job of distilling the truth from the lies and sorting it from the fiction, but I'm sure that I do a lot better job in my book than I'm going to be able to come through with and present on this video. In 1997, I built a website called freedomdomain.com, and for a little while this website was one of the biggest conspiracy-oriented websites on the internet. I was getting about 10,000 hits per day on some of my pages, and in 2010, I shut it down because it just really didn't reflect my way of thinking anymore, and it was too much trouble to change different things on the website, so I just took the whole thing down. And I put it back up eventually as occultmatrix.com, so anybody who's interested can find it there if they want. In 2011, I ended up releasing a DVD called Medicinal Alchemy, and this video taught people for the first time in a public way how to make amber glass or shatter or wax and how to clean up concentrates. Once I released this video, I was contacted by High Times magazine, and I wrote an article for the first Dabs issue, and it was titled Cleaning Up Concentrates. In the very beginning of 2016, I had a near-death experience with nitrous oxide. And that led me to the wild epiphany of writing a book that would involve the roots of religion and tracing that back to the mythology and the history of the goddess in ancient cultures, the lore and mythology of mushrooms in the ancient world, as well as the influence of UFOs on humanity throughout ancient times. The only problem was, though, that I had read hundreds of books and spent thousands and thousands of hours researching, but I still didn't really feel like I could be an authority on the subject of the matters that I wanted to write about. What I did from there was I pulled together and I read over 100 books on various subjects that I was weak on, like anthropology, ancient cultures, artifacts, coins, some of the different artwork of the ancient world. And I needed as well to strengthen my knowledge on the background of the subjects of the goddess, the mushrooms, and the UFOs. There were still several books on my shelf that I needed to read. There were several books and ideas out there that I still needed to explore. So I started looking into those final avenues. My understanding was that these three subjects of the goddess, the mushroom, the UFO were all interrelated and important in relation to the roots of religion, but I wasn't clear exactly 100% on how. So I still had some holes in my understanding and in my research that needed to be filled in, so I went to work right away on that. I read over 100 books on the various subjects, and I also extracted a lot of notes. I went over those notes. I collected over a couple thousand images from the ancient world while I was doing this and exploring the different ideas and subject matter of the symbolism that were on those coins and artifacts and ancient artworks. And in all, I would say I probably spent about a good 5,000 hours on this project, putting all of this together. The result of that is Ancient Psychedelia, Alien Gods and Mushroom Goddesses, a 560-page, 8.5 by 11 book with over 1,000 color images of secret mushroom symbolism in the ancient world. The DVD that I'm releasing is about 10 hours long and includes over 1,300 images of secret mushroom symbolism. There's also a shortened version, which is about an hour to an hour and a half, which I'm releasing for free on YouTube and various platforms to give people an idea. And it's a good introduction and gives people an idea whether they really want to watch the whole video or not and learn all the different details and learn more about the subject. There's a lot more to this than I am able to include on the hour to an hour and a half short. The 10-hour video presentation will not be an addendum or even a supplement to the book. It's just a different type of education. It's a very different form of education, and I don't have the time, like I do in the book, to really go through all the different details of the various mythological deities and their attributes and characteristics. So what I do is I just go through the mushroom symbolism that you're shown on the images, and I explain briefly how those deities and how that symbolism ties into the mythologies of the ancient world and the stories that we all know about. Along the way, while I was reading the 100+ books, I was also going online and doing fact-checking and following up on other leads and going in other directions. And in all, I would say I may have made 2 or 3 dozen new discoveries that I have never seen other researchers discuss or talk about or any other books mention. So I think that I may have found a few things that I can contribute to the field of the ancient civilizations, to ancient aliens, to the UFO field, to the ancient world of the goddess mythology, and also to the mushroom as well. One of the things I've realized along the way is that there are a lot of people who study these various subjects, but the cross-scholarship is nil or very limited. You might find people who study the goddess mythology and history, and they might look into the mushroom history and mythology a little bit, but they don't study the UFO culture at all. And you have people who study the mushrooms, and they do look into both the goddess mythology and history as well as some of the UFO culture and history, but they don't really go very deep into it necessarily. People who study the UFO culture don't actually do much research into anything else. They just stay in the weird zone. So they don't really look into the mushroom stuff much. They don't look into the goddess history and mythology much. So you won't get that information from those corners. So there isn't really a lot of crossover in those fields. And I think that's one of the reasons why nobody's really been able to put together the truth in the way that I've been able to put it together, because I've gone into those 3 fields and I've branched all 3 of them together in a way that nobody else really has. What I've done is actually pretty unique, and I suspect it's going to lead to whole new fields of research. So the entire gist or the theme of my work and what I'm presenting is that the creatress or the creator, the goddess or the god, was thought by the ancient people to be embodied within the mushroom. So therefore the mushroom was the symbol for goddess or god in the ancient world.